Let me ask you a question. How many of you like it when someone appreciates you? Most of us do, right? I've always enjoyed being appreciated and have actually studied this for a number of years, particularly in the workplace. And one of the very simple but important distinctions that I've found is I think sometimes at work we get a little confused between recognition and appreciation. They're related, but they're not exactly the same. Recognition is actually positive feedback based on results, based on performance. It's about what we do. Appreciation is more about recognizing people's value. It's about who we are. So the best way I know to describe the difference between these two is I'll give you an example from my background, from my experience as an athlete. So I played baseball most of my life growing up. I grew up here in the Bay Area, just across the bridge in Oakland, and I actually got drafted right out of high school by the New York Yankees. I didn't end up signing a contract with the Yankees because I got an opportunity to play baseball at Stanford. So I went to Stanford, played baseball there, then I got drafted out of Stanford by the Kansas City Royals, and I signed a pro contract. The way it works in baseball, as most of you probably know, you sign a contract with a major league team, you have to go into what's called the minor leagues, right? And there's a bunch of levels of the minor leagues. You have to work your way up to try to get to the major leagues. Unfortunately for me, I was a pitcher. I hurt my arm when I was in the minor leagues. So my baseball career ended when I was 23. I had 3 surgeries and finally retired at 25. But I started baseball at 7 and was done at 25. So basically, 18 of the first 25 years of my life was spent playing baseball. Now, whether you're a baseball fan or not, how many of you know what happens to the pitcher, which is the position that I played in the baseball game when the pitcher does not do well? Do you know what happens? Yeah, they stop the game. And in front of everybody, the manager walks out to the mound and literally takes the ball out of your hand and makes you leave. Like, let's just imagine for a moment you're at work, right? And you're in the middle of doing your job and you're working hard and doing whatever you do, and then like you make a mistake, like kind of a big one, and like whoever it is you report to bursts in the room and says, okay, stop right there. Come over here, please. And you have to get up and leave, and some other person comes in and starts doing your job for you. Oh, and imagine, by the way, thousands of people were watching this happen. You would probably be a little embarrassed, don't you think? That's what it's like to get taken out of the baseball game as the pitcher. Now, there were different times I'd come out of the game. I never liked coming out, but let's say it was like late in the game. It was like the 8th inning, and maybe I was getting a little tired, and there was a couple guys on base, and my manager might come out and say, hey, Robbins, you did a good job. You kept us in the game, but you're getting a little tired. We're going to get someone to replace you. Right now, at this point, the competitive part of me, I want to stay in the game. I'd mad, but, you know, I'd walk off the mound. I kept us in the game. I pitched well. I got to the 8th inning. I'd go into the dugout where all my teammates were. I'd get high fives from everybody because I did a good job. But let's say it was like the 2nd inning, and it was already 7-0. That meant I didn't do well, right? So he'd come get me. He usually wouldn't say anything, or if he did, wasn't very helpful or very positive, right? And then I'd walk off the mound upset, embarrassed, frustrated. And if we were on the road, you know, in the other team's ballpark, it was always worse because there'd be some mean, heckling fans right above the dugout saying horrible things, like about my mother. Literally. And I'd go sit down in the dugout and nobody would talk to me. Look, the season just ended. The World Series just happened. If you ever watch a baseball game, even if you're not a fan, watch what happens. It's like an unwritten rule in baseball. It's gotten a little better in the last 20 or so years since I stopped playing, but for the most part, still the same. There's like this unwritten rule, oh, leave him alone, he's upset. But you know what I could use when I was sitting on the bench after just giving up 7 runs in the 2nd inning? What do you think? A hug. Some appreciation, right? Not recognition. What are they going to say? Hey, Robbins, way to go. Great job. No, appreciation is not inauthentic recognition. It's not blowing smoke. It's not pretending like someone did a good job when they didn't do a good job. In that situation, I had failed. Not just personally. I'd failed personally, but I failed for the team. I did not do my job. And at work, we all have responsibilities. We all have accountabilities. We all have things we're supposed to get done, standards by which we and everybody hopes that we operate. So we got to hold people to those standards. So I didn't deserve any recognition. I didn't want any recognition. What I needed, and almost never got, was some appreciation, not for what I had just done, but for me. What could they have said? I don't know. They could have said, hey, man, that was rough, but you know what? You're an important part of this team.
We believe in you. I got your back. You know what I love? No one ever asked me this question. Looking back on it now, knowing myself a little bit better and understanding how humans operate, here's what I would have loved someone to ask me in that situation. Hey, is there anything that you need right now? Anything I could do to support you? Now, everyone's a little different, right? Some people might say, no, leave me alone. I don't want to talk. Not me. If someone had actually asked me that question and I'd been honest enough to answer, I would have said, yeah, actually there is. Could you sit down right here next to me and hang out with me for a little while? And maybe we can talk about anything but what just happened. Appreciation is about people. Recognition is about results. They're both important, but they're different. Look, gratitude is a mindset, is an attitude, is a perspective. As Bob said, right? It's looking for, it's finding, acknowledging the goodness. It's a choice we make. We choose if we're going to be grateful. Appreciation is about expressing that gratitude for another human being about who they are, not what they do. Recognition is about what they do. All three of those things are important. But what I have found over the last 17 years working in the business world is that when we separate out recognition and appreciation, it frees everybody up. Because the manager that says, I don't want to send mixed messages, I don't want to say good job when it's not good job, so therefore I'm going to withhold my gratitude, my response back is, okay, so don't recognize when recognition is not deserving, but always appreciate. Because appreciation is important all the time. When things are going great, we don't do a very good job in our culture, particularly here in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. When things are going great, we don't often even celebrate it because we want to do better, right? And when things aren't going so well, or when it's difficult or challenging. You know, I spoke at an event in Silicon Valley, this was probably about 5-6 years ago, and Dacher Keltner was the speaker at the event as well, and Dacher and I had never met. Dacher's the faculty director here of the Greater Good Science Center. And Dacher got up and gave a presentation before I did, like Bob just did, and I was listening to what he was sharing, and he shared about a study that they had done over at Haas Business School, and it was talking about the importance of recognition, but also of appreciation. And in the study, they found that when people were recognized for their work, when they got recognized, they were 23% more effective, more productive than when they weren't recognized. So recognition matters. It's motivating, right? If you do something, you work hard, you produce some result, and nobody says anything, it's like, why bother doing it again? But in the same study, what Dacher said was that when people felt valued and cared about, appreciated for who they are, particularly by their direct supervisor or manager or boss, the person they report to, they were 43% more effective and productive. It made a 20% difference even on top of recognition. Think about it in your own life. Think about it in your own professional experience. When you work for and with people who you know value and care about you, we want to do more, don't we? We want to go the extra mile. I've seen this in simple ways over the years. I spoke at a conference out in Virginia a couple years back, and it was for a big bank, and it was regional managers and people who manage branches. And I talked to this group, and I got a call in my office about a week later from one of the managers, one of the leaders that was at that event. And he said to me, he said, Mike, when you talked at our conference, I had never thought about the difference between recognition and appreciation. Like, it just had never occurred to me. I always thought of it as the same thing. And he's like, I try to recognize my team, but I'm very hard on them, and we focus a lot on the numbers. He said, in fact, I have a daily call with all of my branch managers, and we look at the numbers from the day before, and I'm constantly commenting on the numbers. And he said, and after the conference, I started to realize, wow, I'm pretty hard on a lot of these folks, and I really focus on the numbers. And he said, a few days after the conference, we had one of our worst days of the year, numbers-wise, and I was frustrated when I looked at the numbers, and I got on the call with all my branch managers, but I thought about what you said at the conference, and I decided to take a different approach, and I said to him, hey, listen, I looked at the numbers, bless you, I know they're not the way we wanted them to be yesterday. He said, but I just want you all to know that I appreciate how hard you work, and I appreciate that you come to work every day, and you try to do the best you can for your team, and I know how much you put into it, and I just wanted to say that. And he said, there was dead silence on the other end of the phone. And then after just some silence, one of his managers said, are you doing all right? And they ended up having an interesting conversation, he said, on the conference call about it. And he said, I talked about the difference between recognition and appreciation, how important it is. He said, Mike, the most amazing thing happened. He said, we had the second best day we ever had all year that day. He said, I don't know if it had to do with it. He's like, but I'm doing the appreciation thing more. So there's a difference. Another manager I worked with a number of years ago, she manages a virtual team and was having a hard time connecting with her team. So one of the things she started to do when they would get on, they would do a video conference, people in different places. Some people would be on a conference call. She said, okay, everybody take out a Post-it note, write down something you're grateful for on the Post-it note. Then share it with all of us as we start the meeting, and then take the Post-it note and hide it from yourself somewhere in your desk or somewhere so you'll find it later. She said first people were a little weird about it. They got a little resistance. They thought it was a little goofy. We did it once. We did it another week. She's like, after the third week, I thought, man, maybe I should try something different. So the fourth week after I'd started doing this, I decided I'm not going to do it. And we start the meeting. I get on the call and on the video and people are like, wait a minute, what about the grateful thing? I got my Post-its. I'm ready. She said they really got into it because they found that it was a way to connect. You know, Google did a project a few years back called the Aristotle Project that maybe some of you have heard of. They were looking at the metadata on what creates the conditions for high performance in teams. And looking at not only inside their organization, but around the country, around the world, what are some of the key components that create high performance? The number one component, after 3 years of studying this, they found was what they call psychological safety. Right? What's psychological safety? Essentially, it's trust at a group level. It means we know each other, we care about each other, we have each other's backs, I can be myself, we can make mistakes, we can have conflict. Those things matter. And sharing what we appreciate about each other, what we're grateful for, actually creates more psychological safety. It's a simple thing, but it's profound. I'll share one last story as I wrap this up, because again, these are simple ideas, but as we start to bring them into practice, especially in our professional lives and the people around us, they make a huge difference. I was at another event in Silicon Valley, and a guy came up to me after I got done speaking, and he said, Mike, you know, I've always thought that appreciation was important. He said, but something happened about a month ago where I realized how important it was. He said, I was celebrating my 1-year anniversary working here at the company a few months back, and I wanted to do something to sort of acknowledge not just the 1 year, but the people who had really supported me over the past year. He said, so I went to the store and I bought some cards, some thank you cards. He's like, I used to write out handwritten thank you cards, but like now most of my communication is electronic, so I don't really do that anymore. He said, but I bought a box of cards and I wanted to write out some thank you cards, some of the people that I work with. He said, there was one card that I wanted to write, but I felt kind of funny about it. He said, it's to the VP who runs our whole group. He's like, you know, I know her, but I'm a bunch of levels below her and don't have a whole lot of interaction, but I really respect her. I really admire her. She's really a great leader, and I hope one day if I get to be in a position like that, that I'll be that kind of leader. He said, but I thought it would seem weird, like I was kissing up, so I decided not to write her the card. He said, but I gave out the cards to the few people that I'd written them for, and I got such a positive response. I was really taken by it. I thought, you know what? I'm going to write that card to her. So I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but I'm going to write it. I'll give it to someone who I know can give it to her, and I just want to let her know that I appreciate her. So he wrote out the card, gave it to someone to give it to her. He said about a week later, I got an email back from her. He said, hey, thank you for the card. I really appreciate it. Congrats on your 1 year. Glad to have you on the team. He's like, that was cool. I appreciated that she sent me the note. That's not why I sent it, but he said a few weeks go by. My manager and I, he said, are working on a project. It was kind of my manager's thing, but I'd been helping, and we were scheduled to meet with her to present this idea to her. And my manager really wanted me to come to the meeting because he thought it'd be good for me to have some FaceTime with her. The day of the meeting, my manager gets called into something else. He gets in touch with me and he says, listen, I can't make the meeting. We can't reschedule because it'll look bad and it'll be crazy to get on her calendar, so you got to go do the meeting yourself. He said, so now I had to go to the meeting and meet with her one-on-one to present this idea. I've never met with her one-on-one. I'm kind of nervous. He goes, I sit down with her at her desk with my laptop and start to go through it, and I noticed her desk was really organized. There was a picture of her family, wasn't anything else on the desk, and there was a little bulletin board up on the wall right behind her head. That was the only thing in her workspace. And I noticed on the bulletin board, there's a card up there, and it looks like the card that I sent to her. It was pinned up on the bulletin board, and I bought it a box of cards. It was kind of generic, so it could have been someone else's, but now I'm distracted. As I'm going through the thing, I'm like, he's like, I'm going through my little presentation. I'm like, is that my card? Is that my card? You know? So I don't say anything because I thought it would be weird. He goes, but it ended. It went pretty well. She seemed into the idea. I was a little less nervous. As we were wrapping up, I said, listen, I have kind of a funny question to ask before I take off. I noticed there's a card up there on your board. It looks a little bit like the card that I sent to you. She said, it is. He said, well, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have much stuff up here in your, why is my card up on your board? And she said, 2 reasons. First of all, the day I got your card, I was having a really bad day. I was frustrated, but your card came, and it was like a breath of fresh air. It put me in a good mood. And she said, the second reason, though, and this is even more important, she said, look, I've worked pretty hard in my career. I've gotten a lot of recognition, which I appreciate. But she said, in this job, in the role that I'm in, I don't get a lot of genuine appreciation. People want stuff from me. People are trying to position themselves. People are, I get it. But I'm pretty cynical as it relates to appreciation that comes my way. She said, when I got your card, it didn't seem like you wanted anything. It just seemed like you wanted to let me know that you appreciated me. She said, so I put that card up on the board as a reminder to myself that even when I get frustrated or I think I'm off track or I'm doing some things well, so thanks for sending the card. And the guy looked at me and he said, Mike, I almost didn't send it to her because I thought somehow it would look bad for me. He said, I'm never going to underestimate the value and the power of my appreciation for another human being for the rest of my life. That's how powerful it is. Thank you very much.